Welcome to week 6. Our group focused on the topics of client engagement and implementation. The objectives of our presentation include understanding how change occurs in organizations, learning about employee engagement in the context of implementing change, identifying effective components for meeting with a client in the implementation and action phases, also learning ways to engage employees during an implementation session. We have now reached the fourth phase in the consulting process, engagement and implementation. Let's look at how change actually occurs within organizations. Implementation is the point of consulting. Unfortunately, consultants often focus on the products of the discovery phase and not enough on implementation. Block explains that change cannot be installed into existence. There are actions that help facilitate change and actions that work against it during the implementation phase. When we are looking at actions that facilitate change, we have to focus on the fact that engagement is the art of bringing people together to create and make something work. There has to be a focus on tangible things such as methods, education, and structures. There also has to be attention to the intangibles such as relationships and employee commitment. There has to be a commitment from all to change, and there has to be a commitment to ongoing dialogue. Now, the things that stand in the way of change are when we practice leadership by lamination. When people in leadership come up with a vision and then laminate it and pass it on to every single person in the organization, that does not mean that there's going to be buy-in. We have to focus on a measurement that treats human systems like human systems and not mechanical ones that can just be turned on and off. We have to make sure that a vision is created within the hearts and spirits of every single person within the organization. Because without that, the vision will not come to life and the spirit and initiative will not take fire. We have to avoid fear-based strategies that demand compliance rather than encourage accountability because fear stifles innovation. If there is fear, there will not be change. Block tells us that a consultant's goal is to stay focused on the gifts and capabilities of the people in the room and what they can do about their own actions. The intent is to create change rather than to fix the people. To increase engagement, a consultant can strengthen the ability for an employee to make a difference by asking for active listening and participation from the audience. What employees need to know and need to understand were spelled out by Dr. Growich, Ballard, and Erb when they show that an employee needs to feel worthwhile, useful, and valuable in order to be engaged, and that change will be successful when employees have access to the proper resources like education and support from their leadership. We had the opportunity to interview Steve Baker. Steve is the vice president of the Great Game of Business, and he is also the co-author of Get in the Game, a book that is written about successfully implementing the Great Game of Business. Steve is a gifted facilitator, and he is a passionate coach whose heart is with the frontline employees, and his focus is making sure that every frontline employee has an opportunity for business success and growth. Now, you can listen to Steve's interviews. They're embedded on our discussion post. But what we wanted to touch on is some of the intentional things that Steve does in an implementation to make sure that it is successful. Intentionally, Steve goes in and he is very prepared. He knows the client, he knows the products, and he knows the actions and behaviors of the employees. That allows him within the implementation and interaction to show respect and give employees the opportunity to have the stage and be the expert through intentional questions that Steve will ask them. He then makes a point to celebrate them and let them know that the change will not happen without their gifts and abilities. Now, I have been able to be involved with Steve in implementations of people in rooms of 50 and in rooms of 750. And the thing that makes Steve so amazing with this is unintentionally, Steve doesn't hide behind a podium. Steve gets off the stage and he delivers his message in motion. He doesn't hide behind a podium, but he wanders throughout the entire room, whether it's 50 to 750 people, interacting, interviewing, and celebrating every person in the room. The engagement of the leadership and the consultant is imperative to lighting the fire of change within employees in the organization. As a consultant, there are several ways that you can influence implementation meetings. Block shared these 6 methods. They really address that to use flawless consulting, it is important to be intentional in all aspects of the implementation phase. These choices impact the interactions between employees and the implementation effort. If the quality of the interaction does not change, no standards, measurements, and rewards will have an impact. Block states that implementation of any change comes down to whether people at multiple levels are going to take responsibility for the success of the change and the company. Here are 8 ways to facilitate this. First, Block advises leaders to be authentic and transparent when informing employees about an implementation's goals. Zhang and Liu further explain that the leaders need to foster transparent communications with employees, specifically involve employees' voices for their information needs, communicate how leaders hold themselves accountable, and offer complete, truthful, and useful information to employees. Number 2, employees should think about evaluating their own contributions in meetings rather than only the input of those leading the meeting. Allowing employees freedom to express their concerns and doubts builds faith in the organization and encourages employees to invest in a different future. Number 3, the way the meeting room is arranged sends a message about its intentions. While there isn't one best way to organize the meeting space, what matters is that everyone is engaged in the conversation. Number 4, in engagement, expressing doubt is what counts, not resolving it. Zhang and Liu argue that the positive relationship between authentic leadership and engagement can be accounted for through the increase of the employee voice. Number 5, when employees are part of creating the future, they're responsible for it. Working together enhances collaboration and unity. Asking this question, what can we create together, is very important. Steer clear of old conversations that give employees comfort. Change happens through surprise, unrest, and new perspectives. Number 7, commitment and accountability are born of engagement. Employee engagement indicates a positive psychological mindset, prompting employees to enjoy their work, stay committed to work, and become more efficient and involved in work. Number 8, focusing on what's not working breeds self-doubt. Successful implementation comes more quickly when maximizing each individual's strengths. We had the opportunity to talk with Kevin Walter. Kevin is a founding brother of Tasty Catering. They are out of Chicago, Illinois. If you're not familiar with them, Google them. It's a very fascinating story. Kevin is also a coach and practitioner of the great game of business. If you're not familiar with Tasty, I'm sure you're familiar with some of the awards that they've won. They have won the Wall Street Journal winning workplaces. They have been on the Forbes Best Top 25 Small Businesses. And they're also a 2-time winner of the American Psychological Association Small Company category, Psychologically Healthy Workplace. The Tasty Catering journey started out with 3 brothers who were extremely command and control. That had to change when 2 of their key employees approached them and said that if they did not change their management style, they were going to leave. That began the journey of the brothers becoming servant leaders and empowering and engaging all of their employees. Kevin walks through the kitchen still today, and if he sees an employee that doesn't respond as enthusiastically as they normally do, he stops and he makes sure that everything is going okay for the employee and they figure out what they can do to help. Tasty Catering has developed a holding company that supports employee innovation. They have started many new companies by funding the employees' dreams. The employees then pay them back, but they have their own businesses and they've started a lot of entrepreneurial adventures. But Kevin says that we wouldn't have won any of these awards if we hadn't been open and collaborative and let the team lead the way. We were just smart enough to get out of the way. Kevin also admitted that there are times in times of stress, if he reacts in the old command and control way, he humbly and transparently approaches his employees and apologizes. That's a sign of an amazing leader. Our key points. If you've seen one implementation, then you've seen one implementation. An implementation strategy is particular to each individual situation. Your people will engage based on emotion, feeling, intuition, trust, hope, and the nature of their relationship with those around them and the trust of their leadership. Results are achieved when the entire organization focuses on moving in one direction. And the core strategy for building authentic commitment to implementation is to design new ways for people to engage with each other. Here are our presentation references. We are looking forward to this week's discussion. Thank you for viewing our presentation today.